Good. Hi, this is Victoria Wolders, and welcome to another My Kids Locker empathy tale, creating compassion, one story at a time. I'd love for you to reach out to me with suggestions, ideas, and feedback on my stories. Feel free to connect with me at mykidslocker.com, as well as through my social media outlets, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn. Basically you name it, I have it. So I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear ideas of stories, and I'd love to create a story. If you have an idea, send me an email, send me a tweet, connect with me, and it would be great to add your idea onto our many empathy tales that are helping kids and families and people create compassion one story at a time in their own lives. And so today we are doing a story called The Mirrored Mask. And the story takes place in the land of the Southern Eagle in the Oak and Eagle Kingdom. And today we are going to be focusing on gratefulness. Recognizing positive things in your life, acknowledging them. Often be good to state them out. And gratefulness is a powerful cure for regret. When you douse the fire of fear with the water of gratitude, it will extinguish. So today we're going to be meeting a king that has a powerful moment when he meets a young woman named Ivy. Her mirrored mask is a catalyst to change the king's life, meaning the mirrored mask is something that will help change him as a person for the positive. Leaning into gratitude is important in our life's journey. And as you listen to this story, I encourage you to take some time to be grateful for what you have in your life. Maybe it's the eyes you see from, or the ears you hear, or the food you eat, the family you have, the breath you breathe, the nature around you. Maybe it's just the small things like a cold glass of water, or maybe a warm shower, or maybe it has to do with friends and friendship and being grateful for people who have been with you during times of trouble. So today I just encourage you to lean into gratefulness and to recognize the importance of people in your life and things in your life. You might even want to write a thank you card to someone who is important to you or has noticed you, who values you. Okay, well, if we're all comfortable, then I will begin. Once upon a time, a long time ago, in the Oak and Eagle Kingdom, in the land of the Southern Eagle, there lived a young woman. This young woman was known to many as a half fairy and half human. Her magical powers included her clothing that she wore that would sparkle. Yet she was born without fairy wings. Many people were curious about skills and talents she had, as she was half fairy and half human. She lived in a cottage that was covered with ivy, and so she was named Ivy. One day, when she walked into the village, she noticed there were some very sad villagers. She walked up to them and said, "Oh, why are you so sad?" They said, "Well, we heard that the king was sick." She replied, "Oh, no, that's horrible," she said. "Yeah, well, they have not yet been able to find a cure for his sickness." She replied, "Well, I've never met the lovely king. I would love to meet the king." The villagers smiled and replied, "I guess you'll need to request a meeting with the king because he is a very busy person and may not have time for you." She went back to her cottage. None of the villagers knew this, yet she had a collection of amazing masks. These masks were so precious and so treasured. They were made from many different materials. These masks represented many different feelings and emotions, from sadness to joy to anger and fear. There's so many different she had on the wall. Her favorite mask of all was called the mirrored mask. The mirrored mask was something that she was given when she was born. It was precious because what it would do if you wore the mask was that if you stared at someone, then the mask would turn into that person that you were facing. They would see the mask as themselves, and they would see their goodness and the good things in their lives. She only used the mirrored mask for special occasions. When her grandmother was turning 100, she decided to bring the mirrored mask, and the grandmother wore the mirrored mask. The grandmother looked at her, and she could see all just the pure joy and happiness of her past. The grandmother said that as she wore this mirrored mask, she could see herself as a 15-year-old, and the grandmother became so joyful and happy. As Ivy had looked on her grandmother, the mirrored mask shaped into the 15-year-old grandmother, which surprised Ivy, but delighted herself at the same time, knowing that her grandmother was in such a happy state because she had gone back to her 15-year-old self when she was so joyful and happy. So Ivy decided to take the mirrored mask, and she was going to go see the king. She thought maybe the mask would be able to help him. She made her way through the village and way up the hill to the castle. She knocked on the castle door, and the servant came to the door, and he said, "Excuse me, what are you doing here?" Ivy replied, "Well, I don't really know the king." Suddenly, the servant interrupted her. "Well, then you can't be here." Ivy said, "Well, I don't really know the king, but I have something special that I think could help him from his pain and agony." The servant said, "Well, fine. I will give you 5 minutes with the king. That is it. He is a very busy man." So she was guided through the halls and the corridors of the majestic castle. And finally, he led her to the bedroom. The servant turned to Ivy and said, "The king has a lot to do, yet he is not feeling well. I will lead you into his bedroom, but you need to be kind and you need to be gentle with him because he is sick." The servant knocked on the door, and she could hear a voice from the other side of the door say, "Come in." She quietly walked in, and there she saw a very frail man lying in a very large bed. She said, "I don't know you, king, but I've heard that you're sick, and I have something that you may be able to help your sickness." She said, "I want to be able to make you better." The king looked at her and said, "Well, then, what is it?" Ivy brought out the mirrored mask. She said, "Well, it's called the mirrored mask, and it's magical. Once you put it on your face, it will mold to a memory that is the most joyous and happiest, and it will stay on your face until you feel that joy and that happiness. When I look at your face with the mirrored mask on, I see a face that is the face of what you're feeling and your joy. All of a sudden, his dog barked, and she got interrupted. The king said, "Fine, let me see it," and he grabbed the mask out of her hand. She said, "Well, put it on gently and just close your eyes." As he put the mirrored mask on his face, it gently warmed and it softened and it sealed to his face for a period of time. As he closed his eyes, she could see there was some light and happiness, but then all of a sudden, his eyes became angry. "You have made me so sad." She looked at him and said, "Why? What? This was supposed to give you joy and happiness." The king said, "You've made me so sad and mad because it shows me the joy that I used to have, and now I don't have it." As Ivy looked closer at his face with the mirrored mask on, she could see a young man's face, one that was unaged, one that did not have the pains of the past, and one that had gentleness to it. However, the mirrored mask struggled, and soon it turned back to his aged face that was angry, bitter, and dark. He threw off the mask and said, "What I saw in this mask was this 20-year-old man falling in love with my queen, and my queen passed away. I am so sad and mad that she died of sickness, and it makes me frustrated and angry that I have to relive the experience of falling in love with my queen." Ivy picked up the mirrored mask. Luckily, it had not broken. And she said to him, "But enjoy the moment. Enjoy that moment, you see. There is gratitude in that moment." He said, "It's so hard for me to do that." Ivy looked at him with sad eyes. "Why?" As he shared his thoughts, a tear ran down his face. He said, "Because I don't feel like I treasured it in the moment. At the time when I was 20, I was falling in love with my queen. I took it for granted. It made me so sad to think that I took it for granted." Ivy looked at him as she was sparkling in the sunlight. "This is a privilege. The mirrored mask allows you to see into the past of when your most joyous moments were, and you can celebrate that. There is no shame in doing that. Just because you didn't celebrate it then doesn't mean you can't celebrate it now." He looked at her with tears in his eyes, and he smiled. "You're right." The king, frail in bed, turned to look her in the eyes. "Will you come and visit me every day, and will you bring the mirrored mask? I believe that this might make me better." She agreed, and from that point on, she came every single day for a full month. The days went by, he started to laugh more, and he'd share these beautiful moments. He said, "Oh, this is when I happened to get my first dog, and it was so much fun. It was when I was 8. And Ivy would look at the mirrored mask, and it would be a very young boy who was very happy and joyful. Another day, he put on the mirrored mask, and he said, "I see my daughter. She is playing with a kite, and oh, there was so much fun and so much happiness." He started to smile more, and he started to reflect on all the beautiful moments that had happened in his life. Over a period of 30 days, he went through over 30 memories that brought him gratitude appreciation, and joy. There were times where he would cry because he missed the moment. But he knew gratefulness was something that was treasured beyond measure. By the end of the 30 days, he felt better. The king turned to Ivy and said, "I don't feel sick anymore. I feel so happy. I have all these beautiful memories to remember." She looked at him and said, "Remind me. I'm so glad of the mirrored mask that has helped you in your life journey." He looked at her and said, "Ivy, you've helped me in the journey. If you were not the one to show up at my castle door, I would not be as happy as I am today." And he lifted up the mirrored mask and put it on her face for the 31st day of the month. He looked in and he could see the moment that she had walked through the door of his castle. She said, "Oh, I'm so glad that the mirrored mask has given you such joy, and I'm glad that I was part of that." The king was happy again. He delighted in his joy, and he was able to overcome his pain by focusing on being grateful in the moments of his life that were joyful. And I think the end. And I think this story speaks a lot to how we get stuck in times where we have lost something. But I think that when we've lost something, it can be really powerful too, because you've realized that you've really loved something too. So, sorry, I'm getting a little emotional, but I think today, take some time to lean into gratefulness. Take some time to think about the good things in your life, what has happened in the past, and maybe you too can put an imaginary mirrored mask on your face today and help you develop some gratefulness. Well, until next time, this is Victoria Wolders, Creating Compassion, one story at a time. Feel free to reach out to me at mykidslocker.com. I would love to connect with you about ideas and thoughts for stories. And I just want to take some time to be grateful, to thank you for listening. And with that, I am signing off for today. Thank you.